You know, building the future of artificial intelligence, it's turning out to be maybe the most expensive project in human history. And right in the middle of it all, you've got OpenAI, the company that basically kicked off this whole AI race. So today, we're going to dive into the absolutely wild financial web they're weaving to fund this world-changing ambition.
Okay, let's just start with a number that's kind of hard to wrap your head around. $1 trillion. And no, that's not what the company's worth. That's the potential cost just for the computing power they need to hit their goals. That's more than the entire economy of a lot of countries. The stakes just do not get any higher than this.
And hey, those aren't my words. That's straight from OpenAI's CEO, Sam Altman. He's not just building a company here. He's trying to get an entire industry to back this massive, historic gamble. He's basically framing it as a bet they all have to make together.
So that brings us right to the core of this whole thing, the quest to fund this insane ambition. And it's a challenge that is forcing OpenAI to get really, really creative with its money.
It's the obvious question, right? I mean, when you're talking about spending more money than any company ever has, where does it all come from? Well, the answers are leading us into some very new, very unconventional territory. All right, let's get into it, because this is where the story gets really juicy. OpenAI is striking these huge and frankly kind of strange deals with some of the biggest players in tech just to lock down the infrastructure it needs.
So first up, there's the deal with the tech giant Oracle. Now, yeah, Microsoft is OpenAI's main cloud partner. But this move to bring in Oracle really shows you just how desperate the search for computing power has become. It's a key part of their strategy to not put all their eggs in one basket.
And the headline number here is just staggering. A potential $300 billion deal over 5 years for data center capacity. But that massive number, it really doesn't tell the whole story.
Right, so here's the fine print, and this is what's so fascinating. That $300 billion, it's not guaranteed cash for Oracle. Think of it more like a giant credit line that only gets used if OpenAI is wildly successful. If demand for their AI stuff fizzles out, the whole deal could be renegotiated. So it's this huge commitment, but it's built on a super uncertain future. And that explains why Oracle's stock shot up at first. It's a massive high-risk, high-reward bet for them too. Okay, next up, securing the actual brains of the operation. We're talking about a deal with chipmaker AMD, and this is all about raw number-crunching power. The potential scale here is measured in power, 6 gigawatts. To put that into perspective for you, that is enough electricity to power 3 Hoover dams. It's an almost unimaginable amount of energy, all going towards computing. And this is where the financial engineering gets really, really creative. See, only a fraction of that power is a firm order. To sweeten the pot, AMD might basically give OpenAI around 10% of its own stock, which is worth a mind-boggling $36 billion. This isn't just a simple purchase. It's this deep strategic partnership. It's a kind of financing trick we just haven't really seen before. Of course, you can't talk about AI chips without talking about the undisputed king of the market, NVIDIA. And yep, you guessed it, OpenAI has a massive preliminary deal with them too. With NVIDIA, the potential deal is for a $100 billion equity injection from them. But this is not a simple investment. The best way to think about it is like a voucher. NVIDIA gives OpenAI a bunch of money, but that money can only be spent on one thing: more NVIDIA chips. It's this fascinating, self-fueling loop.
So, when you kind of zoom out and look at all these deals together, you start to see it's not just a bunch of separate transactions. What's being created here is a deeply interconnected web of financial dependencies that stretches across the entire AI industry.
You know, tech investor Charles Fitzgerald put it perfectly. When you see deals this complex and this new, you have to wonder if the real innovation happening at OpenAI isn't just the AI models, but the crazy financial engineering it takes to even build them. And this brings us to a super important concept you need to understand: circular revenue. Just imagine money flowing in a big circle. A supplier, let's say, invests in one of its own customers. That customer then immediately turns around and uses that same cash to buy more stuff from the supplier. It can create this powerful illusion that demand is just booming. So let's follow the money here. NVIDIA, which some people are now calling the central bank of AI, puts cash into a customer. That customer then uses those funds to place these gigantic orders for NVIDIA's chips. The money has basically just done a full round trip, boosting NVIDIA's sales numbers with its very own cash. Now,
If this whole pattern of circular money and massive bets on some future technology starts to sound a little familiar, well, it should. It has some seriously eerie echoes of a previous tech boom and bust.
The comparison is pretty striking, isn't it? Back in the 90s, telecom companies like Lucent would lend money to their startup customers. And what did those startups do? They used those exact loans to buy equipment from Lucent. It created this artificial boom that ended in a spectacular crash. The parallel to what NVIDIA is doing today is, well, it's hard to ignore. And it raises that critical question. Are we just watching history repeat itself?
But there's one final ingredient that makes this whole cocktail potentially explosive, and that's debt. Pumping massive amounts of borrowed money into this already complicated web just cranks up the risk for absolutely everyone.
So what is the single biggest risk here? It's not just about some investors on the stock market losing money if this whole AI thing goes bust. No, it's about something that could have much, much wider consequences.
Veteran investor Bill Janaway explains it perfectly. He says, look, tech bubbles can pop and just wipe out stock value. That happens. But when those bubbles are inflated with debt and companies suddenly can't repay what they've borrowed, that's when the damage can spread beyond the tech world and right into the wider financial system.
And this is not some theory. The debt is already pouring in. We're seeing Elon Musk's xAI raising billions in debt. Oracle just borrowed $18 billion to fund these new data centers. And what's really worrying is that a lot of this is happening in the shadows of private credit, where there's very little transparency. What that means is, if these giant bets fail, the losses won't just hit tech VCs, they could cascade right back into the traditional banking system we all rely on.
So that leaves us with the trillion-dollar question. Has OpenAI built a brilliant new financial engine that's going to power the future? Or is this whole thing an incredibly fragile house of cards, built on funny money and a massive bet on technology that, frankly, is still on the drawing board? Only time is going to tell.